The narrow streets of Capernaum were alive with activity. Merchants shouted from their stalls, children darted between the legs of passers-by, and the scent of fresh bread mingled with the salty breeze from the Sea of Galilee. Yet amid the daily bustle, a man moved with singular purpose, his face etched with desperation. Jairus, a respected leader of the local synagogue, pushed through the throng, his heart pounding. His only daughter, a 12-year-old girl, lay on the brink of death. Each step felt heavy with urgency, but hope drove him forward. He had heard of the miracles Jesus performed. Spotting Jesus surrounded by a crowd, Jairus fell to his knees, the hem of his robe brushing the dusty ground. "Teacher," he implored, tears streaming down his face, "my little daughter is dying. Please, come and lay your hands on her so that she may live." Jesus, moved by the raw faith in Jairus' voice, reached out a comforting hand and nodded. "Lead the way," he said. As Jairus guided Jesus through the packed streets, the crowd pressed in tightly, eager to witness what might unfold. Suddenly, Jesus paused. The air seemed to shift as he turned and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. A woman stepped forward, trembling. She had suffered from a bleeding disorder for 12 years, enduring pain, isolation, and fruitless treatments. Believing in Jesus' power, she had touched his cloak, and in that moment, her body was healed. Jesus smiled at her, his voice gentle yet firm. "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." Though Jairus was moved by the encounter, each second felt like an eternity. He tugged anxiously at Jesus' sleeve, silently urging him onward. As they continued, a messenger from Jairus' home appeared, his face pale and grave. "Your daughter is dead," he announced bluntly. "There is no need to trouble the teacher anymore." Jairus staggered under the weight of the words. The world seemed to tilt, the vibrant streets fading into a dull haze. But before despair could fully claim him, Jesus placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Do not fear," Jesus said, his voice steady and unwavering. "Only believe." When they arrived at Jairus' home, the atmosphere was heavy with grief. Mourners wailed loudly, their cries piercing the air. Flute players added to the cacophony, their mournful notes echoing through the crowded room. Jesus entered, his presence commanding attention. "Why all this commotion and wailing?" he asked. "The child is not dead but asleep." Laughter, bitter and disbelieving, erupted from the mourners. How could he claim such a thing when the girl's lifeless body lay before them? Unfazed, Jesus instructed the crowd to leave. Only Jairus, his wife, and Jesus' closest disciples, Peter, James, and John. The room was quiet now, save for the soft rustle of fabric as Jesus approached the small bed where the girl lay. Her face was pale, her chest still. Her parents clung to each other, their eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. Jesus knelt beside the girl and gently took her hand. His voice, filled with both authority and tenderness, broke the silence, "Talitha cum." The words hung in the air like a spark of light. Slowly, color returned to the girl's cheeks, her chest rose with a deep, shuddering breath, and her eyes fluttered open. She looked at Jesus, then at her parents, and smiled. Jairus and his wife gasped, their disbelief melting into tears of joy. They rushed to their daughter, enveloping her in a tight embrace. Jesus, ever practical, smiled and said, "Give her something to eat." The girl laughed softly as her mother hurried to fetch food. It was a simple, human need, but it underscored the miraculous reality of her restored life. Outside, the mourners and curious onlookers had gathered, their skepticism replaced by awe as word of the miracle spread. When the door opened and the girl stepped out, alive and smiling, gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd. "Did you see that?" one man murmured. "He brought her back from the dead," another woman exclaimed. The people marveled, some falling to their knees, others raising their hands in praise. For them, this was more than a miracle, it was proof of Jesus' divine power and authority over life and death. As the family embraced, Jesus quietly slipped away, leaving them to celebrate in private. His disciples followed, their hearts full of reverence. The lesson was clear: faith, even in the face of the impossible, could move mountains. In the days that followed, the story of Jairus' daughter spread throughout the region, a living testament to the love and power of the Messiah. For Jairus and his family, it was not just a miracle, it was the moment their lives were forever changed.